some of the key takeaways from this session that you guys should watch out for, right? More than what CI/CD we will try to cover, why is it important, why is it needed, and how does it impact the business? A clear understanding of of an automated CI/CD pipeline in the GKE environment, and obviously what are the benefits of it. Then Saurabh and Alfred will cover how to create and deploy when using Spinnaker, right? Spinnaker being an open source tool, right? Then obviously what kind of deployment strategies can you employ, and more importantly, what kind of rollback tactics can you configure so that the disruption is minimal whenever there is any incident while deploying, right? And lastly, we have a couple of live demos for you on how to use some of these tools that we're going to talk through in the next 1.5 hours. A special demo on a tool called Customize, which is a patch management tool. Yeah, so these are some of the points, some of the takeaways that you can take away from this session, literally. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Saurabh, who can talk us, take us through some of the benefits of an automated CI/CD pipeline. Over to you, Saurabh. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Karthik. Thanks everyone for joining in. This is Saurabh here. So before we get into like details about Google Cloud Platform services, which can really support CI/CD activities and other best practices, it is very important that we understand the why part of this. Because IT has always been viewed as a cost center, and it is important that IT should deliver all the value what is expected and to make an organization as an innovation engine to drive the transformations. And companies should be in the business to like build some features for the users and not on configuring and maintaining and doing activities around the infrastructures. So it is very, very important that they should be focusing more on the developer side or development activities than on the maintaining and configuration pieces. And it should be automated as much as possible. So GCP developer tools will help the developers with the speed, scale, and security, along with the baked-in best practices to develop like Google as a company. So to understand that, continuous integration, or we call it as CI, is a development practice which basically requires a developer to integrate their code into a shared repository several times a day. And each check-ins then verified by an automated build, allowing the teams to detect problems very, very early. CI generally does not help in getting rid of bugs, but it definitely going to make a lot of bring in a lot of easiness in terms of finding those bugs and removing it on time. And on the other hand, the continuous deployment is closely related to CI and refers to the releases into production of software that passes the automated tests. So CI/CD pipeline overall can be easily understood as a process pathway through which you can deliver a single unit of production ready software, and your team will choose which services they will use to build on this. So there is no single canonical implementation of a general CI/CD pipeline. A lot of folks are using some different tools and all those things. So the core benefits, if you can imagine, from CI/CD are first and foremost the deployment frequency, because for the primary application services on which you are working, how often you are building your code, how often you are deploying that code either in a dev stage, test stage, or in production, that is very, very critical. So the more you do that, the faster you'll be able to take a call whether this code is really ready to be deployed into production, and overall time to market of getting that application to be available for your end users can be reduced significantly. Secondly is like lead time for changes. Like how long does it take to go from code commit to code successfully into production? So in that case, once you start your development for a particular feature or for an upgrade of your existing application, then how long will it take like finally to release that product code into production? That is also is very, very important. And as I was talking about fixing those bugs on time, so we are talking about MTTR, which is mean time to restore. So for the primary application or services you work on, so how long does it take generally to restore the service when a service incident occurs? It can be an unplanned activity, or it can be a service impairment, or it can be anything else. And the other part is about the change fail rate, Means what percentage of the changes are resulted in a degraded service, or subsequently how exactly you are able to take corrective measures to remediate all those things. For example, uh, if there is a service outage, right, or if there is a patch rollback is required, so how exactly you are doing that. So those all things are really important for you to understand, and all these activities are or features are contributing to the betterment of that application to be available to the customer in the best possible way to enhance their overall customer experience. Next slide, please. So let's take a closer look about some of the Google Cloud CI/CD services, right? Here you see primarily two personas. One is a developer and the other one is end users. So for developers, there are some services which will be very useful, like Cloud Source Repository. Now, what is Cloud Source Repository? Google Cloud Source Repository are fully featured private Git repository hosted on Google Cloud Platform. Collaborate very easily, securely, manage your code on a fully featured, scalable way. And you can also extend your Git workflow by connecting it to other GCP tools as well, including Cloud Build, Stackdriver, which is currently known as Cloud Logging and Monitoring, Cloud PubSub, or any other service. It will also enable you to access your code fast with powerful index search across all your owned repositories. So it is a very powerful features to start with for CI/CD activities in Google Cloud Catalog. The next feature you see is Cloud Build, right? So what exactly is Cloud Build? So it is a service that executes your build on GCP infrastructure, and Cloud Build can import your source code from cloud storage, cloud source repositories, as I mentioned, GitHub or Bitbucket, and then execute a build of your specifications, which produces some artifacts like container images or Java archives or some other artifacts. It also features implementing Cloud Build like some features like binary authorization, which is a process of creating attestation on the container images for the purpose of verifying that certain criteria should be met before you deploy those images to the environment. And I believe Alfred will be talking more about all those features in the upcoming slides. Next feature you can see is a container registry. Container registry is a single place for your team to manage Docker images, perform vulnerability analysis, and decide who can access with what fine-grained access control. Now, existing CI/CD integrations will let you set up fully automated Docker pipeline to get the fast feedback. I believe going ahead in few months, you will see artifact registry is also one term from Google's side, which is basically an evolution of this container registry, and as a fully managed service with support for both container images as well as non-container artifacts. So artifact registry will eventually replace container registry, and artifact registry provides a single location for managing packages and Docker container images. It also integrates with CI/CD tools and Google Cloud runtime environments so that you can run and manage entire artifact lifecycle. Now, very important piece, both from the developer perspective as well as from the operations perspective, is operations piece. Now, operations with cloud monitoring and logging, which previously used to be known as Stackdriver suite, developers collect metrics, logs, and traces across Google Cloud or your application deployment. This is primarily being used to build in some out-of-the-box dashboards or views to monitor platform and applications. It will also be used to set up some appropriate performance and availability indicators and other operation activities. And some of the features which are very unique to Google Cloud is called something like Google Security Command Center, which really can help the results of some policy violations in case if that happens as a part of your single pane of glass for security. And in Security Command Center, you can also explore some of the events such as failed deploy attempts due to policy restrictions or break glass flow workflow activities or something. So it is very important to have a single pane of glass view for all the applications being deployed in your environment. So operations is very important piece. Now, these all services are being used from the developer persona. Now, let's take a closer look from a user persona. So user is accessing that application which is ultimately getting deployed in some of your runtimes, being depicted here as app prod Kubernetes engine or app canary Kubernetes engine. Now let's take a closer look about cloud load balancing. Now what is cloud load balancing? It is a fully distributed software defined managed service for all your traffic. So it is not an instance or a device based solutions. So you won't be locked into a physical load balancing infrastructure or face an high availability scale or management challenges, right? So you can also imagine to apply all the cloud load balancing to all the traffics for various protocols like HTTP, TCP, UDP and all. And you can also terminate your SSL traffic with HTTPS load balancing and SSL proxy. This is built on the same front-end service infrastructure that powers Google others products. To just give you some idea about the scale, it can support up to 1 million plus queries per second with consistent high performance and low latency. So whatever traffic enters in cloud load balancing basically talks about 80 plus distinct cloud load balancing locations, which maximize the distance travel for the Google's private network backbone. Now, the one more element you can see as an open source element on the extreme right called Spinnaker. So Spinnaker is an application deployment and management platform which takes the pain out of deploying your applications. That means no custom scripting. It is completely supporting our blue-green deployments, canary releases, any manual judgments you want to do, or instant rollbacks of patches or application code. It also offers you a single pane of glass for deployment in multi-cloud and hybrid scenarios as well. It was basically started with a project led by Netflix and Google and some other CI/CD thought leaders, and finally being open sourced at a later stages. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here overall, you can see that this is how exactly an application delivery pipeline might look at, where developer is making a particular change into the source code of an application and pushing that code, creating a Git tag and pushing it to the code repository. And finally, that code is going into a container builder, that blue box you can see, where Cloud Build detects that particular change, right? And basically builds a Docker images and tests the image and push the image to a Spinnaker. So that's what you can imagine, right? And then finally at the bottom, you can see in Spinnaker piece, Spinnaker detects the image, deploys the image to Canary and tests the Canary deployment. After a manual approval, Spinnaker finally confirms that this particular code is ready to be deployed, and it deploys that image to the production environment. So this is how exactly a typical application delivery pipeline will look like. Now I will hand it over to Alfred to take it over and discuss more details about the CI/CD and other deployment scenarios.
Good afternoon once again. My name is Alfred. I am a cloud architect at Sears, as Karthik mentioned earlier. My specialization is around Kubernetes and DevOps and infra modernization in general. So let's go ahead and begin. So let's talk about what the CI/CD lifecycle looks like, right? So we have 4 primary phases. One is the source code phase, where the actual development work goes in. Then we have the build and test phase. This is where the artifacts are created and built. The artifact management phase, where the artifacts are actually stored and contained. And then finally, the delivery phase, where the applications are actually delivered or deployed. Now, the tools that we are going to be using here, and which will also be mentioned in the demo subsequently, have already been highlighted by Saurabh earlier, but we're going to delve a little deeper into each and one of these individual phases, identify what components are going to be used, and how they're going to benefit us. So let's begin with the source code repository management, right? So I'm pretty sure most of you already know what a source code repository is, right? It's where you keep your application code. Now, for this session, we are going to be using Cloud Source Code Repository, which is a native Google service for maintaining your private Git repositories. Now, any standard Git operations that you would normally do on GitHub or GitLab, those very same Git operations can be applied on CSR. And it also has the ability to sync to existing GitHub or Bitbucket repositories if you have like a multi-CSR environment, a multi-source code repository environment. So I'll give you a small, so while I'm explaining these slides to you, I'll also give you a small console walkthrough of what it actually looks like on the console, and what all you can see and what all you can do while using it. So you can just open up the hamburger stack on the top left corner and scroll down to cloud source code repositories, which should be here. And you can see I've created one for a sample application, which we'll be demonstrating at a later stage. But you can see here are all the relevant files. This one in particular is going to be of importance. We're going to cover that soon. So let's move on to the next phase, which is the build phase, the build and test phase. For the build and testing phase, we will be using our tool of choice is going to be Google Cloud Container Builder. So this is the CI tool. It's basically a managed CI tool offered on Google, and it's essentially serverless. So a lot of you might be asking, right? A lot of you might already be familiar with Jenkins, and you might enjoy using Jenkins. Personally, I do too, primarily because of the various open source integrations it has. But if I had to label one flaw on Jenkins, right, just in general, is that it's just the management aspect of it, right? If you have multiple concurrent builds running, right, you have to make sure that your Jenkins compute actually scales up to meet that demand. Albeit it has become a lot easier since now Jenkins can be hosted on Kubernetes, but there's still a fair amount of management overhead when it comes to that, right? So Container Builder is a purely managed serverless offering which can entirely execute your builds for you. They won't ask you how much compute required. They won't ask you how much storage is required. Everything will be managed by Google, and it also has the ability to trigger builds based on changes on your various source code repositories. So it can be a source code repository on Google or GitHub or Bitbucket or wherever it might be, right? It can still trigger builds from different repositories. So this is what the builder function is going to look like. It's going to trigger whenever it detects a new Git tag. So if someone makes a commit and they add a new Git tag to that commit, right? Container Builder, this is not the only trigger. This is the trigger that we are going to be using right now. But it's going to trigger based on a new tag. That trigger will initiate the action for building the Docker images. It's going to derive this data from the cloud build.yaml file, which I had highlighted earlier. So it's going to execute these steps in that file. It's going to run unit tests on it. And then finally, it's going to push the Docker image fully built into the artifact management system, in this case, GCR, which is Google Container Registry. So this is an example of what the cloud build YAML actually looks like. And if you can see, there are three primary steps here. The first step is where we are building and we are tagging the application. The second step actually runs the application, and the second step actually builds the application, and the third step pushes the application onto the Google Cloud Container Registry repository, along with the tag name. So let's move on to artifact management, which our tool of choice here is Google Container Registry. So this is a private container repository where you can store all your Docker images. Now, one particularly interesting feature about the container registry is its native vulnerability scanning. So what it allows you to do is, and this feature, although it's mentioned in alpha here, it's actually in GA right now, so you can use it whenever you like. All you have to do is click a checkbox, right? And that actually enables the vulnerability scanning for your Docker image. So every time you push an image onto this repository, what the container registry goes on and does is it performs a kind of application scan for you, and then it lists out the kind of flaws and potential vulnerabilities you have in your application, along with the severity. One additional thing that they do aside from this is it also provides links to remediations, which is, I find personally very helpful. So it just, if I push an image onto my registry and I see like 100 plus issues, right? I won't have the time to go and research each and every issue. So what they actually do first is that actually gives you a link showing that here is a remediation link. These are the steps you can use to actually address this particular vulnerability or flaw, which I find personally very helpful. And I'm sure you would too as well. And then we finally get to our final stage, which is delivery. And in this case, we are using the black sheep, the open source tool Spinnaker. So up until now, we have only been using Google native tools because of the kind of native integrations and serverless offerings they provide. But now when it comes to delivery, we are choosing to go for an open source tool called Spinnaker. Why? Well, let's discuss more about Spinnaker. So Spinnaker is an open source continuous delivery platform that was created by Netflix, right? And I feel Spinnaker's true benefit lies in its multi-cloud faceted delivery system, right? If you have an environment where you have multiple, so if you're not using Kubernetes, right, I wouldn't suggest using Spinnaker. Otherwise, it thrives on a Kubernetes environment. It's almost as if it was built for a Kubernetes environment because it pretty much was. But so it thrives on having a multi-cluster environment, right? That's where it shows its true prowess, because Spinnaker is a fairly powerful tool. It has a lot of different deployment strategies it offers its users, but it also abstracts a lot of things and makes it a whole lot simpler for users to actually manage their application deployment, which is why it's becoming a very popular tool, especially in any Kubernetes forums. So let's understand a bit more about how Spinnaker works, right? How are the cogs and wheels rotating in the backend? So as you can see, these are the list of components that are there in Spinnaker. Let's go through a few of them, right? So Igor. So Igor is the polling agent. This is the component which actually interacts with Cloudbuild or Jenkins or whatever CI tool you have, right? And it actually polls it and checks for changes, right? So this is an essential aspect of Spinnaker. Event bus is just a sort of dependency for Igor, right? This is what actually it serves as a sort of webhook for these CI interactions. Then we have the deck. The deck is the user interface, right? The Spinnaker console that we all see when we open it up on the browser or wherever we do. That's the deck, right? That's the UI. And the gate is perhaps one of the most important components. I would say it's the second most important component here, because every interaction that you have with Spinnaker via the UI or however else you do it, it goes through. These translate to API calls via the gate, which is basically the API gate. So all the applications you create, all the pipelines you create, right, all the interactions you have with the Spinnaker UI, those are translated into backend activity via the Orca component is the most important component because it is the brain of Spinnaker. It is the orchestration engine. All the other components actually rely on the Orca to actually manage and orchestrate everything. The cloud driver is very aptly named cloud driver, and it's abbreviated CD because that is actually the CD aspect of Spinnaker. Cloud driver ensures that the whatever builds or applications you have are actually deployed. The actual delivery and deployment is ensured by cloud driver. And at the bottom, we have Front 50, which is basically it's a store for your metadata and your pipelines. Roscoe, which helps with image making, and Rush, which is the scripting engine. So if you want to include any BAT or shell scripts into your pipeline, then Rush will take care of that. Okay, so I think we have an idea of what. I don't expect you guys to remember all of this right now, but this is just to give you a brief understanding of how Spinnaker works in the backend. Let's get into some deployment strategies with Spinnaker. Okay, so there are 4 deployment strategies which Spinnaker offers out of the box. The first one is called Highlander. It's not been mentioned here because it's potentially the most useless deployment strategy unless you're running in a dev environment. So it's named Highlander from the movie Highlander, where there was a famous line that says, "There can only be one," right? Very aptly so, because in Highlander deployment, there is only one version of your application, and all of the traffic is being directed to that single version. Fairly straightforward, doesn't need further explanation. And then we have red-black, right? Or blue-green. So what is the difference between red-black and blue-green? Quite frankly, nothing. It's the same. It's the very same thing. So blue-green deployment, as I'm sure most of you already know, it's where you have two versions of the application running, version 1 and version 2, and all of your traffic is directed to a single version. In this case, you can see all the traffic is directed to the green or version 2. If at all, a revert is required, version 1 is still up, right? Even though no traffic is being directed to it, it is still up and running. So in case of a rollback, the option of rolling back to V1 is always available. And this is your standard blue-green deployment strategy. The reason why Netflix has labeled this red-black is because this is just a tool that's been, this is just terminology which has been coined by companies such as Netflix and Kubernetes, etc. Because red-black is actually very much in theme with the color code of Netflix, which is why they've chosen to label this as red-black. But in all effect, it's pretty much the same thing. So then we move on to the next strategy, which is rolling red-black. Now, rolling red-black is a slightly more interesting version of red-black because now, rather than directing all of the traffic to a single version, what is being done here is that the traffic is being directed disproportionately. So you have 80% of the traffic going to V1 and 20% of the traffic going to V2. Right? And this can be done incrementally. So if you find that after the validation phase, we are satisfied with V2, you can start directing more and more users to V2 until we have all our users on V2 eventually. And then finally, we have the most popular deployment strategy for agile development companies that prefer, a quick go-to-market, quick application updates. In fact, Zomato uses Canary deployments. The reason why they have so many frequent, the reason why Zomato is able to have so many frequent UI updates is because of this kind of deployment strategy. So it's become fairly popular now. So I won't be surprised if a lot of you already are aware of it. But Canary deployment is very similar to rolling red-black. In fact, it's the exact same thing. The only difference is that instead of V1 and V2, you will have partial updates. So instead of V1 and V2, you'll have V1 and V1.1, right? And so in V1.1, we start directing 10% of the traffic to V1.1. We do some functional testing, Canary analysis. We're happy with V1.1. We increment it, 20% of users to V1.1, 30, 40, so on and so forth until 100% of our users are eventually on the newer update. But this is a very simple way to limit the blast radius of your application updates. So if we spend our time, just thinking, this application update has to be perfect. I need to make sure all the bugs are gone. It integrates well. All the functional testing is done. All the unit testing is done. If everyone had that kind of mindset, right, it would take forever for a single application update to come on. But in today's world, we need to release updates as soon as possible, right? A minor update can make the difference between you and your prime competitor, right? And the frequency of these updates also matters. Being able to, in almost near real time, right, fix live issues that your users might be having. This is all made possible through this agile methodology, which is actually part and parcel of Canary deployments. So I hope that allows you to understand what the benefits of Canary deployments. And here's just a visual representation of what I was just talking about, right? You have some users in version 1 of the code, a few users in V2, and eventually all users get moved to V2. So this is the Spinnaker pipeline that we are going to be deploying today. We have a front end and a back end of our application. And we are going to keep a stage in between. So what's going to happen is we are going to deploy everything in Canary automatically. As soon as there is a new tag uploaded, everything's going to be deployed automatically. But for production, there's going to be a check post here, right? Before we deploy to production, we never want our production environments to have an automated deployment. This part is going to require a manual approval. So once the Canary or the dev environment is set up, right? Once we have validated and tested this, we are satisfied with how it's looking, we're satisfied with everything, then we can have a manual approval process, approve this, and then deploy to production, and we are satisfied with whatever changes have been made. So this is the kind of pipeline that we're going to be doing today, okay? And this just talks about, of course, Spinnaker being an open source tool, it has a lot of integrations. you can see, in terms of CI, it has integrates with Jenkins and Docker and Cloud Build, like I mentioned earlier. It works with all three cloud providers. It works with your Kubernetes clusters pretty much anywhere. It integrates well with a lot of different monitoring tools. You can even integrate a notification channels such as Slack or Telegram, etc. No need to cover this much, but let's get right to the demo. Okay. So let me bring up my screen. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to my, as you can see here, I have two clusters. I have a Spinnaker cluster, and I have a cluster where my application is residing. So let me just connect to my Spinnaker cluster. I want to get access to the UI soon. Okay. So we can see our pipeline over here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger this pipeline. So I have my source code repository here. What I'm going to do is I am going to let me guys show you the application first. Sorry about that. So let's take a look at what the application is already deployed, by the way. So let's take a look at what it looks like right now. So there's a front end and a back end. There's a canary and there's a production. This load, okay. Services. So this is the canary and this is the production. So you can see this is the canary version and this is the production version. And let's say that, so this just highlights some of the details about the backend part, and this just highlights details about the front end part. So this all looks well and good, but I think I would like to change the color of this to blue, right? I think the orange is a little too bright, a little too intense. So let's go ahead and change the color to blue. So let's change something in files. Change the color to blue. I'm just doing a bit on it. And now I'm going to tag this as v1.0.6 my application, because if I'm not mistaken, I think 1.5 is already out. Okay, Cloud Build here. I'm going to tag this. Great. Okay. So now that I've made a change to the code, I've pushed a new tag. What we should see happening here is that instantly a build has been initiated, right? And if I click on this, I can actually see what all execution steps are happening in this build. So we can see here what is happening here. Now, this should take a good 4.5 minutes to complete. While it's completing, let me show you what the build trigger looks like. It's very simple to create a trigger, right? So you can see this is the trigger name. And I have chosen the event to trigger. So I can trigger on push to a branch. So I can, every time there's a push to a master branch, I can commit, invoke a trigger. Every time there's a new tag, I can invoke a trigger, or I can invoke based on pull request. This works only for GitHub. So I'm saying that, if any new tag, this applies to any tag, right? It's a regex. If any new tag is uploaded, then I want the following Cloud Build file to be executed. Now I can choose to have a Docker file instead, but in this case, I've shown you the Cloud Build YAML that we are using. And that's pretty much it. So as soon as this event occurs, this build.yaml file is going to be executed. And this is basically going to initiate our build, which we will see over here. So what's going to happen next? Okay, once this build has been completed, we will notice that the image 1.0.6 of our application is going to be stored in our container registry. So let's take a look at the container registry. Great, I can see my application here, among others, and 1.0.5 is already out. So remember the scanning option that I was talking about, right? So right now, scanning has not been enabled for these images. But if I wanted to enable scanning, all I have to do is click on this button, right? And what happens after this is pretty obvious, that it means any new image that I upload will have that scanning applied to it. And then I can see what all kind of issues are there in my application code and how I can go about fixing them. But let's wait for a while. Eventually, we will see v1.0.6 of our application done. Okay, so now that the deployment is done, if I just refresh this, I can see 1.0.6 of my application image is out. And surely, the Spinnaker pipeline has been triggered automatically. Now, how does Spinnaker know that a new image has been uploaded? If you can see something here, it says PubSub. So this means that this pipeline was not triggered manually. It was triggered via PubSub. What is PubSub? PubSub is a messaging queuing system on Google Cloud. So if I go to my PubSub, what I've configured here is a Spinnaker topic, right? And every time an image is uploaded to the container registry, right? This Spinnaker notification topic is going to receive a message. So basically, the container registry is going to publish a message to the Spinnaker topic saying that, hey, I have a new image with a new tag. Okay. Now, Spinnaker is also subscribed to this topic. So this Spinnaker pipeline is subscribed to this PubSub topic. So it knows that, okay, a new image has been uploaded onto GCR. Let me go ahead and trigger my pipeline. And as you can see, it's gone ahead and started triggering the pipeline. So the full Canary deployment is done. Now it's waiting for my permission before deploying to production. So before we agree to deploy to production, let's take a look at what the Canary looks like. So if I just refresh these pages, I can see that my orange has been turned to blue. My production is still orange, but my Canary has been turned to blue because I have not rolled out the changes to production. So looking at this blue, I think it's okay. It's not bad. Let's go ahead and make the production also blue. So all I have to do is, here's the manual approval process, and I will just say continue. And eventually, what will happen is that our production environment is going to incorporate the same changes. And what we should see is that this orange turns to blue as well. This is our production environment. So let's wait for the deployment to complete. This should be done fairly quickly. So in just a matter of a few minutes, our entire pipeline has been deployed. Everything has been automated until now. The only manual thing I've had to do so far is approve the production rollout, but everything else has been automated. And yeah, it seems like production's also is done deploying. I think we're just waiting for the front end to get ready. And there we go. So now I can see that even my production environment has turned blue. And I'm happy with this change, but I, I can go around and ask folks, I can ask my users and I can ask my colleagues, what do they think of this new version of the application? And turns out they aren't too fond of the blue. So they've gone ahead and asked me to go and revert these changes. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to show you how to roll back your changes, because rolling back is a very important part of your CI/CD pipeline, right? So these canary deployments allow us to limit the blast radius, which is good, but it doesn't allow us to eliminate the blast radius. So because there might still be some challenges. So what I'm going to say is that if I go back to my application code, I'm going to revert this particular version. I've reverted it. Let's give it a new tag now. V1.7. And now what should happen is that the image is going to get built again, and we are going to revert back to our classic orange screen. And you can see the entire same process happen again. You can see our build should be initiated. Let's check out the cloud build. And right now I'm just running one build, right? But imagine a scenario where I have like 10 plus concurrent builds. I have multiple development teams, right? So here is where cloud build truly shines, because if you have that kind of environment, right, scaling up your CI/CD infrastructure can be kind of challenging, even if you are using Jenkins or Spinnaker on Kubernetes. By the way, the Spinnaker is on Kubernetes, right? But if you're using your CI tool on Kubernetes, even then scaling up can pose to be a challenge. There can be issues with the pods. You might have to restart some pods. You might have to reconfigure them. But in cloud build, all of that headache is just thrown away, right? It doesn't matter if I have one build or even 1,000 builds. Everything's going to be done automatically. And eventually we'll see the same thing. A new tag will be pushed to GCR, and eventually this will go back to orange. So while that is happening, okay, let's leave that happening in the background. Let's move on and we can talk about customize, because I need you to take my word for it. This will eventually happen. I'll show you in the end. But in the meantime, let's move on and talk about what customize is, right? In the interest of time. So Kustomize is, again, another open source tool. Honestly, it doesn't really fit that well into the theme that we've been discussing so far about CI/CD. But the reason why I wanted to include Kustomize in this session is to basically just introduce you guys to what it is and how it can be useful. Because personally, I find it incredibly useful, right? I find it fairly interesting, and it makes my life simpler. Right? If you are a DevOps engineer, this is definitely, if you're a DevOps engineer working on Kubernetes, this is definitely going to make your life simpler. Again, so if I explain to this, all, I can explain all of this to you in words, but I think you might have some difficulty grasping it. So I would rather show you the demo, but just to give you a slight overview of what it is, it's basically a way to templatize your YAML files, right? A way to manage your YAML files. So instead of having a kind of environment where you have 100 different YAML files, you might have 30 for prod, 30 for dev, and then another 20 for staging, right? And then all these YAML files are different in nature. They have different labels, they have different replicas, they have different, just different specifications in general. Now, how do you manage all these different manifest files, right? It truly becomes a big headache when you're dealing, especially with a multi-cluster environment. Because when you're dealing with a multi-cluster environment, now you've got your YAML spread across everywhere. And we don't want a situation where we have 100 plus YAML files, right? That just becomes too messy. Even the best DevOps engineer is going to have difficulty dealing with that kind of mess. So that's where Kustomize comes in. And Kustomize says, just keep a single file, and all your other versions of the file can be created as overlays. Right? Basically, it'll be the base file with some patches added on top of it. So let me go ahead and show you how Kustomize works. So My screen is visible. First, let me faster.
Yes, answer.
Okay, so let's look at what the tree structure is. Okay, I have a base folder and I have an overlays folder. In my base folder, I have my standard files. So let's take a look at the base folder first. This is my deployment file. It's a standard Nginx deployment, nothing out of the box, very standard. And similarly, I have service file. So one thing you might want to note here is that I have not mentioned any namespace for this, which means it's going to get deployed in the default namespace. I have not mentioned any replicas, so only one replica is going to be created, right? But look at customization file. This is a customization file. Right, so all it has is it's just mentioning the resources it's referencing to. So it says basically I want this customized to be applicable to the deployment.yaml and the service.yaml. Now, how does this work? Let's check. Let's go back to our tree. If you can see, I have two overlays. I have an overlay for dev and I have an overlay for prod. And I have a deployment file in the dev and I have a deployment file in the prod. Let's take a look at what this dev deployment file looks like. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same as the earlier deployment file. In fact, it's very important to have the metadata to be the same. If the metadata is not the same, then Kustomize won't understand that this file is actually just a patch for the earlier deployment file. So it's important to keep the metadata the same. Otherwise, Kustomize will have difficulty understanding that this is the actual file that needs to be patched over. And if you notice, this is not a full deployment file. In fact, it just has the bare minimum. It just has the bare necessities. And all I'm saying in this deployment file is that it's not a full, it doesn't have the container image, nothing, because Kustomize understands that the initial deployment file already exists. What this deployment file has is just one key difference, which is this one, the replicas. I am adding a different number of replica count to this. So if I look at my customization file, every directory has a customization file. So this is very important. The customization file in the dev folder, it mentions that my base folder is the earlier customization file, this customization file, right? And it's and I'm saying that in my dev deployment, I want two changes to be made. One, I want this new deployment YAML, I want this to be patched. I want it to patch with the existing deployment, which means that my new deployment for dev should have two replicas. It should have all of these metrics, because all of these data, right, which is not there in the older deployment file, I want that to be added to my dev. That is part one. Part two is I'm saying that I want the dev deployment to be created in the dev namespace. Okay. And similarly, if I look at the prod, here I'm saying that because it's my prod environment, I want 4 replicas. And if I look at the customization file, I'm just saying that I want the namespace to be prod. Now, this has already been deployed. So if I do get pod and dev, oh, it hasn't been deployed. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. So how do I deploy it? So let's go to our base file. Okay. I'm just going to do, by the way, Kustomize has integrated with the kubectl command line utility tool. So all you have to do is run a kubectl -k. -k represents Kustomize. Or you can just do and I'm going to do apply on overlays /dev. So I'm saying that I want my dev deployment to be completed. And now what do we see? In our dev environment, we have 2 replicas running. Similarly, I'm going to make the same application for it. So I'm going to deploy simple prod. And if I check my prod environment, I have 4 replicas. Now, say I want to change my dev environment to a single replica instead of two. So all I have to do is change my overlay. And in my custom deployment file, I can just change this replica to 1. And I can apply this again. And surely we see that the deployment is scaling down to a single pod. Now, just to understand the power of this, right now I'm just doing this to change replicas and namespaces and things. If you look at our main file doesn't have a namespace, doesn't have replica count, nothing, right? It's just a template, and we are building on top of that template. But to understand the power of this, you can use this for even services. So if I want my prod service to be an external load balancer, and I want my dev service to just be a node port or a cluster IP, I can make these changes without drastically changing the main YAML. The main YAML is going to remain the same. All I'm doing is adding patches here and there. I am not writing a full YAML file here. I am just writing a small chunk that I want to patch into this file, right? So this is actually incredibly useful when you're dealing with a multi-cluster environment, or just a multi-environment cluster, meaning if you have like dev, prod, etc. If you have clusters spread across different cloud providers also, this is still going to be very useful. So Kustomize actually integrates with your CI/CD tool. So you can actually have customized scripts as part of your CI/CD tool. It actually integrates with Spinnaker as well. So I can make these changes to Spinnaker. So I can automatically, this hasn't been shown in the demo, but what can be done is that I can tell Spinnaker that when you're deploying to all these Canary backends, deploy 111 replica, because these are dev environments essentially. But for the production, I can tell it, okay, because these are production environments, you're going to increase the replica count by this much. You're going to change the namespace, so on and so forth. So you get a lot of flexibility, a lot of customization, which is, I suppose that's why they've named it as such. I'm sure this pipeline must be done. Yeah, this pipeline is done, and we can see that it's reverted back to orange. I think it's this it's waiting for production approval. But yeah, so this is an example of what the power of Kustomize and CI/CD on Google Cloud can actually do. So I tried not to show you any specific use case. What I'm trying to show you is the potential use cases, right? What all can you do with it? Now, it's up to your imagination how you decide to use these tools. The way I use them is not necessarily going to be the same way that you are going to use it, right? I implore you to actually spend some time, do some research, do some brainstorming, and identify what would be the ideal kind of strategy you would like for your CI/CD deployments. And with that, I would like to conclude my session. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll hand it over back to Karthik. Karthik, over to you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. Thanks to the both of you. In fact, thanks to Saurabh as well. I think that was very, very insightful, and I'm sure our audiences liked the demo as well. So we saw how to deploy a CI/CD pipeline in real time using Spinnaker, and also how to deploy Kustomize. So I think it was a wonderful session. Thank you for that. We are a niche cloud engineering business that was born in the cloud. In fact, we have been a technology-led business transformation company for the last 16 years, driven by the idea of driving technology-led digital transformation. We are, in fact, one of the top cloud and analytics solutions companies in the APAC, US, and the Europe regions. We work with organizations across geographies and specialize in application and infrastructure modernization, data management, and data engineering implementations. We are also a global premier partner for Google Cloud for the last 10 years, and work very closely with them on various projects and customer engagements. Next slide, please, Alfred. Yep. So we've had a footprint in 14 locations across the globe with over 3,000 customers and over 300 engineers, having having over 150 professional and associate Google Cloud certifications. We cover all of the major verticals and provide highly tailored solutions based on the client's use case and problem areas. Yep. So what we would like to leave you with towards the end of the session is, let's say, if you in your organization are are thriving on driving some of these changes to some of these cutting edge cloud-based technologies, Seers is your go-to partner, right? You should reach out to us, and we can work very closely with your teams to help you on these. There are a couple of more sessions that are lined up in the coming few weeks. The next one, as I said, the theme is mostly around DevOps. So the next important topic that we're going to talk about on November 11th, again, is infrastructure as code. Again, we'll have some live demos and speakers from Seers and Google talk a bit more about infrastructure as code and some of the tools out there on GCP and open source, right? And the next one on November 26th. So please feel free to share your feedback about this session. How did you feel? Are there any points that we missed out and we should have covered?